All right. So today we are talking about how to get fully booked with high value clients through my Thrive method, which eliminates competition and positions you at the top of your industry. And we're going to talk specifically for the next 30 minutes or so about what works in the transformation space. And what I mean by that is that you are working, if you're in the transformation space, you're working with clients who need to be committed to the process of change. So they don't just buy something from you and then walk away. They have skin in the game, right? So I'm going to give you three components that are crucial when marketing and selling in this space. And it's unique to this type of work. Um, the typical marketing and sales process is often repelling clients when working in the transformational space instead of drawing them to you. So I'm going to dive right in. The first component is positioning, or what I like to call unsaturation. So to do this, you have to lift yourself up out of the saturated marketplace. There's really not even a blue ocean these days, and find yourself on dry ground entirely. And then you're going to be able to sit there and draw prospects to you who are, let's just continue the analogy, who are drowning in a sea of information and advice and freebies and downloads and reels and blah 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 blah. And to do this, you need to be able to identify the exact person who would benefit most from your work, based not just on who that person is, but the very minutely specific challenges that they're facing and the place that they are in their journey right now. So, this is absolutely crucial to getting attention in today's marketplace. Like, you need to pay super attention to this. And you want to not overthink this, of course, even though all of my clients, almost all of them who come to me, have the overthinking disease. I have it too. I totally get it. But this is why what you need is a set of questions. I'm going to give you a couple here. But when I work with my clients, I create containers for them. If you're like human design, for instance, and or you've done your human design and you know that you're the kind of person who responds better than you are just kind of coming up with things out of thin air. That's why having containers and questions will really help with this process. So rather than, trying to sit there with a blank sheet of paper. So what you need to do is match up your best fit clients' specific needs with your specific experience, expertise, qualifications, and all of that. So I want you to ask yourself right now a specific, write this down or pause, ask yourself a simple question. What am I the best at for a specific kind of person? So I'm even going to frame this in a different way. If you could only get paid after you got results for your best fit client, who would that person need to be? So, what kind of resources would they need? What kind of characteristics would they have? What kind of personality, perhaps? What kind of business or job or life or whatever area that you work in would they need to have? And so I want you then to take these simple questions and probe really deeply into this exploration and start to tease out that strong positioning. No one else is doing this. I can guarantee it seems so simple. And you're probably like, yes, I've done this. Have you really done this? Because when you look out into the marketplace, you will see that almost nobody is really doing this to the level that they could be doing this. Um, so again, without overthinking it, there is an opportunity for you to get even closer. So for example, closer to your best fit client. So for example, I only work with, and this is a fairly recent thing for me, I only work with transformational entrepreneurs because out of all the different kinds of businesses that I could work with and that I have worked with over the years, over 12 plus years, I've determined I'm absolutely the best at helping that type of person with their marketing. There are a million ways to do marketing. And if I spread myself too thin, I'm going to constantly be stressed the F out. And I absolutely have been trying to keep track of way too many different brands and too many messages. But with transformational entrepreneurs, I can apply my behavioral psychology background, my passion for that, the fact that I understand the transformation process better than almost anyone else I know, backwards and forwards, inside and out. Like I've had that in my life multiple times. I'm able to help then that kind of entrepreneur narrow their positioning, their marketing, their revenue model so that they're consistently producing things like $20,000 months with only email launches, or they're quadrupling their revenue on the exact same program. I've had this happen because we dove into the customer psychology and connected with their audience on a deeper level. And that is absolutely my superpower. And I can't necessarily get results like that with any old entrepreneur. So I need to stay in my lane where I can have the most impact. And that's what you need to do as well. So the second component is your marketing. And there are two things you need to do with your marketing as a transformational entrepreneur. And again, I'm going to use the term un something, but here it's unmarketing because I want you to zig when everybody else is zagging. And the two key areas where you need to do this are you need your language to be very specific and compelling. So the more specific, the better you can be. You want to use numbers and data and proof, and you want to use like percentage of clients who've done such and such a thing, or percentage of repeat clients, or percentage of clients who've gotten this result. And you want to use compelling numbers that help create an image in your client's mind of the kinds of results that they might get. So I'm not telling you to drone, to like bore your customer to death with data and facts and figures, but to find data and facts and figures that directly relate to the image that they can paint in their mind of what's possible for them. And this is something I'm sure you've heard before, but I'm really calling it out here because folks in the transformational space often rely on, it's so easy to do this, to choose esoteric and floaty and sort of vague language. It's really hard to quantify something like, for instance, spiritual evolution, right? But the more that you can make this more tangible, the better. So I want you to also think about what things look like on the outside world for your ideal client. Like what could be visible to other people? This is just another way of looking. So we talked about, adding in facts and figures and data and numbers and percentages, and wherever you can add something really concrete, that's awesome. And then you can also, and even if you can't do that, you can also just think, what would other people say to them when they have the result that you help them get? What would somebody else comment on? What would somebody else notice? And the more you can target these very specific outcomes, the more you can express visible, concrete results in your customer's mind, right? So I want you to not shy away from this because you're afraid of overpromising. This is the number one thing that I see with my clients. It's a mindset issue, and if I were your coach, we would be digging into that, right? We would go through the cultural programming and possibly wounding from your childhood or maybe past lives, who knows what, but old stories that you may be telling yourself about how you don't want to be like so and so. Because here's the thing, what you always find out is that so and so is actually enrolling your clients, like clients who could work with you really effectively. And potentially so and so is doing more harm, depending on who so and so is. I'm not throwing shade. Then you could do good with that same person. And only because you're not really willing to really go there and get tangible and get concrete and get specific with your prospects. So I will climb off my soapbox about that issue, but it's really important for you to pay attention to how well you express tangible results in your marketing. It's an art, and it gets better with practice, of course, and it's easier to do with coaching and support and all of that. But secondly, with your marketing, you need to understand that this is a huge one. You need to really understand the ambivalence and the indecision that's going on in your prospect's mind. So that's happening for most sales. We're not just talking about the transformational field here. They have done, like, behavioral economic research has shown that fully 84% of sales, might be 86, but let's just say it's 84% of sales are lost in any market to indecision, plain and simple. And the way I think about this is like when I'm at the grocery store and I'm trying to choose between two kinds of dish soaps, and I'm looking at one is this price and one is that. It's not even really a price issue. It's literally like I'm very sensitive to smell, so I'll smell them and think, do I want that on my pots and pans and my utensils? Um, and then, I'll sit there in this like really low ticket uh, purchase decision. And oftentimes, if I can't find just the right thing, I'll just say, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to go to the other store tomorrow and I'll get it there." So the thing is, you got to think about, like, this is dish soap, right? And I'm sitting there spending time trying to decide whether I want to spend 287 or 489 or whatever it is on dish soap. And imagine what kind of process your clients are going through when they're deciding on something that is a significant, life-changing service that's going to permeate many areas of their life, for instance. And so think about like 84%, again, 84 or 86, whatever the number is. It's a high percentage of, we'll just stick with 84. They don't decide at all. And so what you need to do at this point is oftentimes it's the exact opposite of what you're taught to do with traditional marketing. I mean, I'll really get into the details of what this is. So you're taught to make sure that people feel the pressure of like they're going to miss out. Don't, it's a limited time opportunity. There's only so many spots. This may never come back again, which I've absolutely done myself, by the way. We've all done it. But with the transformational field, you need to understand. So the reason that people don't make this, the reason that the indecision happens, if we come back to me at the dish soap aisle at the grocery store, the reason I'm not choosing, the reason I'm saying I'll come back tomorrow or I'll go somewhere else is that my fear of picking the wrong dish soap is greater than my fear of not doing anything at all or like running out of dish soap tonight when I'm doing my dishes after dinner. So again, bringing it back to something, huge, much more significant in people's lives is like people that they're in fear. They literally are. Think about how you feel when you're not making a decision. Think about how many times you've not created a new program, done some web copy, even written an email or something like that because you're afraid you're going to do it wrong. If you really tap into your fear, you may not consciously realize that, but deep inside, you're thinking, I don't want to do it wrong, so I'll put it off for another day. And that's exactly what's going on with your prospect. They are more concerned about making the wrong decisions. They're more afraid of making the wrong decision than they are of making no decision at all and having no change in their life as a result of that no decision. I hope that's making sense because again, if we're thinking about that fear and we're putting on the pressure, which is how you usually close out a sales process, whether you're on a sales call with someone or you're sending out your final emails for a launch or it's the end of the sales page or whatever. We're oftentimes kind of saying like, decide now, you got to do it. And what's going to happen is you're making them say, I don't want to deal with this. Like their brain just goes into overload. They feel like a deer in the headlights and they decide I'm not going to do anything at all. This is such a huge, like once you actually really realize this, you will also understand a couple of things. One is you'll understand the potential for you to increase your revenue just by making a few simple tweaks. And then you'll also understand that people are not saying no to your offers because they don't like you and you didn't do it right or it's not about you. In other words, in 99.9% of the cases it's not even about like the offer or the marketing or whatever. It's never about you, but then it helps you gain perspective to kind of say, this is actually just like a logical problem that I need to like make some tweaks and just shift some things around. So again, what we want to do is back off on the pressure. So I'm just kind of going through my notes here and making sure that I don't miss anything. Um, yeah, you want to back off at the pressure, off on the pressure at the end of the sales process. And there's some very, very tangible ways that you can do this. So I like to use what I call reverse attraction. And it's basically like if you were in the dating world and somebody was obsessed with you because you're not really that interested in them. If you've ever had that experience, you know exactly what I'm talking about, where you're thinking, why is it always the people I'm not that interested in who are completely obsessed with me? Well, that's just the way attraction works. So if you can sort of activate that reverse attraction energy with people you are interested in working with, this is where you can kind of create magic in your marketing. So you think about like what you would do if you truly weren't all that interested in them, in your energy, but then very specific. So there's mindset involved, there's psychology involved, but then you can break it down into identifiable phrases like, this may not be for you. Or you can even go a little bit further and say, this is probably not for you if, and then say, a specific reason why it's not for them. And when you do that, you're easing off on the pressure. It's like the person in the dating world is not just, can I call you tomorrow kind of thing. You're letting up on the pressure valve a little bit and giving them space. And when you sort of back off and say, this may not be for you, what happens is people draw a little bit closer because the minute they start to see that something is potentially being taken away from them, then they want to draw closer and they want to get more of that. Bring it back kind of thing. So you can also another way to ease up on the pressure and to give them some relief at the end of this process and to help them make a decision is to reduce the overload of information and the number of decisions that you give them to make and really be their guide in the decision making. So number one is to reduce the load of information. Like don't, we have this tendency, especially online, and this is part of why I think what's happened in the online marketplace has happened and that people are like, closing, like, crossing their arms and saying no to things is because we think, oh, I need to give them more information. I need to give them another free thing or whatever it may be. So you don't want to do that at the end of the sales process. I'm not saying don't ever do it, but when they're coming to that decision point, what you want to do is strip away all the extra. You've heard before, like a confused mind always says no. I'm sure you've heard that. But what you want to really recognize too is that you can actually become their partner and guide in making that decision. So um, so I'm not suggesting, for instance, to be manipulative, but if you're looking at a qualified prospect and you're at the decision making point, let's say you're in a sales call with them and you know that they're right for your work, like it's definitely a fit, you can say something like, most of my clients do, XYZ. Or you can say, if I were you, I would do XYZ. So again, you're acting as a guide in helping them make that decision. That's what they want. Honestly, when people are in fear, if they really are interested, of course, there's going to be people who aren't interested, and that's okay too. That's, nothing is for everyone. But if they are in that space of indecision and they can't even really identify it as fear themselves, what they want is for somebody to come along and help them make that decision. You may have even, if you think about your purchase decisions in the past or times when you haven't made a decision, if somebody didn't like invite you in and say, I think you should do this, like this is what would work, it's worked for a lot of my clients. I recommend you do that. If you've had that experience, you've been like, okay, thank God, like suddenly the pressure's off and it's so much easier to make that decision. Be that person in your clients' lives. It also starts the transformation process and it starts the relationship that you have with that person in the transformation process. It's incredibly powerful. So don't shy away from that. And I want to think about like how this could look. If you and I were working together, I would then review your web copy. I would look at your sales emails, your perhaps your sales script, if that's something that you work off of, discovery calls, or just the structure and whatever. And we would look for these little points of leverage to see how you can just make a couple of tiny tweaks in your languaging and a couple of tweaks in the process itself to help release that pressure and help your prospects feel a lot like that sense of ease at the end of this process instead of that crunch and that fear. So think about how much of a difference that could make to your revenue, though. Let's just say that you only have 300 people on your list. Just as, I mean, that could very well be you. You might have 30 people on your list, but let's say you have 300 people on your list and at a typical conversion rate of about 1%, let's say you have a $497 offer. No, let's actually say you have a $2,000 offer because the math will be easier. And you expect to have 3 sales of a 300 person list, but remember, 84% of those people are not going to make a decision just simply because they can't decide. So that's about 100 extra people. I think it's a little bit more than 100 extra people. Just imagine if you could even, I'm not going to promise you that all 84 of those people would decide to say yes to your program, but imagine if you could get like 50 of them, or imagine if you could even just get 10 of them, 10 additional clients at $2,000 each is $20,000 in additional revenue only because you were able to identify, oh, I'm putting too much pressure, or I'm giving them too many choices, I'm giving them too much information. And you could just make these small tweaks. Like $20,000 is a pretty significant amount. So that's what we would do if I was working with you. I would absolutely review all of those things and really try to look at realistically how we could create leverage in your business. Like that's where it's at, baby. Like leverage is where it's at. So again, I want to also remind you, just when you think about these human psychology things, it's totally normal for people to be indecisive. And it's such a relief when people find out. It's like, oh, it's not because people don't like me. And it's not because I suck. It's because, people are just peopling. That's what people do. And that's why the components of the Thrive method that we're talking about here are really all about leverage. They're about like flipping the switch and just finding those tiny tweaks and those tiny points of leverage that can make all the difference in your business. And so finally, then the third component here is your revenue model. So you'll sense a theme here because I'm going to suggest that you unscale, right? So it's unsaturate, unmarket, and unscale. And when you unscale with your revenue model, I have a particular passion for this because I really believe it's going to be the cornerstone for every transformational business in 2025 and beyond. I'm going to be really clear. I'm not against low ticket like books or low ticket self-study products or anything like that. And I have absolutely experienced transformation from things like that in my own life. In fact, when I went alcohol free about a little bit more than 4 years ago, I read a book and that was what did it for me. Although it was my own process in writing my notes and stuff for the book. But I remember that I joined this forum and I thought I'm probably going to need some support. And I went in there and I just honestly was done with my drinking problem. So I um, did not need the forum. But what shocked me was how many people were in the forum still struggling. And I was like, wait, that was in the book. I can't believe you read the book and you're still struggling. And I'm not saying that I'm judging people for that, but it's a perfect illustration of a few things. Like one is everyone is not, you might be a person who's also had life changing results from reading a book or doing some small ticket self study program. You might be a unicorn. I think in some ways I'm kind of a unicorn because I was always that way in class. Like I was, growing up in school, I was always like, why are we talking about this thing that was in the textbook last night? Like I'm super impatient once I get something. I just want to move on. And you might be that way. But the vast majority of people, like that is kind of a unicorn thing. The vast majority of people are not like that. And then the other thing I want to say is like, for instance, with the example of drinking, if I had read that book maybe 10 years earlier, maybe I would have needed that forum. And this person has programs that go along with her book. Maybe I would have wanted to take one of her programs. Like the book just came along when opportunity met willingness for me. I was just completely ready to make that change in my life. So again, it depends where in the customer journey they are. So and honestly too, the vast majority of people are going to need a much more um, intimate and high touch environment for a life changing kind of service, the kind of thing that you provide as a transformational entrepreneur. So, skipping ahead in my notes here, sorry, excuse me for having to do this. So, yeah, actually want to point out one of the ways that I like to frame this is if you needed your bone set, would you hire a surgeon to take care of it, or would you get a course on how to learn how to, perform surgery on yourself in 6 weeks for only three payments of $9.99 each? Like you would probably just go to the surgeon. So again, that's what this is about, is like being able to work with someone in a highly intimate container where you are bringing your heart and your expertise and your experience and your and just even witnessing and being able to connect with that person throughout their journey. It's invaluable. But that's why, so tying this back into your revenue model, this revenue model of high ticket and low volume is actually perfect for most small business, most people with a small audience. So thinking about that person who has an audience of 300, it makes way more sense to do a revenue model that has very few products at a very high ticket, and you really just home in on those products again at a high ticket price. So most people who are, when I think about like people that you might admire these people, and I've been one of them in the past, who has had like a $497 product or a $297 product, and you're thinking, oh, they're doing so well. And I mean, again, I can say this from personal experience. I've had that experience of being that person and not really feeling like I was the making an amount of revenue that was equal to the time and effort and overhead and all of these things that are involved in running a program like that. Unless you have a huge audience, it's not really worth it. And even when you do have a huge audience, I will say I've worked inside so many different businesses, and I've had entrepreneurs who are like I've had clients who are making $500,000, $750,000 a year, and they're posting on Facebook like occasionally kind of thing. They don't have huge followings. They don't email their list a ton. Now there's other ways that they're attracting clients, of course, but they're also not working like, 7 days a week. And then on the other hand, I've had clients who are making multiple millions as top line revenue in their businesses, and they're completely burned out. They're completely exhausted. They wish they could just break their entire business model and start over. And if they become my clients again, they will, because that's what I'm focusing on. Like, seriously, this is a hill I will probably die on, especially 2025 and beyond, is to genuinely say, go deeper, make a stronger connection. It's going to benefit the client, it's going to benefit you and your nervous system, and it's definitely going to benefit your revenue. Because when I think about that 750 a year entrepreneur who works, like let's say 30 hours a week versus the one working 80 hours a week, and they're probably not even taking home 750,000 at the end of the day. So they might be making top line multiple millions, but they have so many expenses and so much overhead, and they have so much extra stuff to do that it's not even really worth it, at least in my mind, especially for people like us. Perhaps, if you're like me, you're an introvert and you don't really want to be out there all the time. So this is a great business model to actually, again, high ticket, low volume is a perfect business model for the transformational space and for really heart-based entrepreneurs. So let me see. Let me make sure I don't forget any of my notes here. Um, you really you have to unlearn all the things that you have been programmed to believe with our post-influencer world. Um, we have literally been programmed to believe that the only thing that matters is that you have tons of likes and tons of follows and tons of eyeballs and the more the better in terms of that visible engagement that does not pay the bills. It more often than not does not translate to sales. You hear it all like what I need you to understand if you don't really believe it is you need to have a certain level of trust that those of us who have either experienced certain things in our own businesses and or worked with a variety of clients who have all these different experiences that it is absolutely possible, not just possible, but so much better to reduce that need to be out there getting all of these, again, public acknowledgments of everything and then building up this brand that looks good on the outside and inside is not supporting you and is exhausting you, or you're just waiting for that moment to go viral and then everything's going to take off. It's not. More often than not, it's genuinely not going to. So, what I want for you is for you to be able to scale without becoming exhausted. And to scale just simply means to scale your income, like unscale to scale, in other words. So, okay, let me make sure I think I have driven that point home. That is the revenue model section. So I want you to, yeah, go back to your website. I want you to think about your offer suite. I want you to think about your product ecosystem and really think like, what do I have? If you have more than three or at most five different kinds of offers, you need to trim it down. You need to have no more than like one to three. And again, maybe max five. And really think, and I have tools and things that I provide my clients with as well that help them, like, a spreadsheet that you're able to kind of plug this in and say, does this actually make good sense for me? What is the purpose of this? Like, how much revenue do I think I can make? And where is it going to lead next? Where does it fit in the product ecosystem? But the first step is really to just trim that down and to ask yourself, like, in a perfect world, what if I could only, like, if I only wanted to work like 20 hours a week, let's say, and I wanted to make $500,000 a year, what could that look like? Because the first and highest leverage place to look. So another thing is people come through my virtual doors all the time and they think like I got burned out and exhausted on my one-on-one work, and they haven't really considered that the way they were doing the one-on-one work, that for instance, when you look at your positioning and you understand who's the exact right client for you, if they haven't done that and they think the answer is to go out there and scale and do like a one to many model, they first need to come back to positioning and understand, did I really target the right person? Because maybe the reason I'm exhausted is because I'm not targeting the right person and I'm frustrated all the time working with the wrong person. Um, and maybe I'm working so hard for the sale because I haven't looked at my marketing and I haven't understood the customer psychology behind my marketing. So again, it's just a process of critically looking at the different areas of your business and understanding before you just like throw the baby out with the bathwater, like what am I really trying to accomplish here? So I could talk about this forever. Like I could literally talk about this for 3 hours, but I've tried to keep this very intentionally short so that what you could do is take this information and just apply it. Like if you need to come back and listen to this again, pause, take notes. Like literally the juice is going to be in applying what you're hearing. So if you just even take one or two key nuggets from this class and you apply them to your business, you will see results. You will start to position yourself, like again, the whole premise of the thrive method is to be able to eliminate competition, to just kind of carve out your own space as the leader of your own space. You don't have to be the leader of the entire industry of whatever it is you do, but become a leader in your industry, the industry that you carve out for yourself. So again, listen to this again if you need to, take notes and take action on this. Now, if you want to review your business with me, I'm very excited to share that I have a few spots open for complimentary Thrive consultations. And these are not typical sales calls. I will offer you generous strategy tips and advice. I am known for how I take care of my clients, and how carefully I listen and how thorough the answers that I provide. But that said, you're going to want to make sure you're actually up to hear the answers, because I've been known to make people cry, not because I'm mean. I'm not mean. I'm very kind. but because they're like, holy cow, why have I been doing this way like all along? Like they realize it could have been so much easier for them. So you really need to be prepared to hear the truth on one of these calls. If you're still hoping for viral success, you're hoping for like that one Instagram post that's going to make all the difference and blow up your business. We're probably not a good fit. I'm pretty no nonsense, but I'm also fun. Like I said, I'm also kind, and I just want results for my clients more than I want you to have like viral, a number of likes or whatever. I'm really not into vanity metrics. Because to me, results translate, to what a result is having a booked out roster of amazing clients, essentially. So here's how the consultation does work. We'll take a deep dive into your business for about an hour. We're going to look specifically at your positioning. This is an hour long consultation, you guys, like for free. We're going to look into your positioning, how you can tighten it up to, again, to really think about that best fit client, that person that if you only got paid and after you got results for them, who would that be? We'll run through that with you. Your messaging and your marketing will again look at those high leverage opportunities, those leverages that we can just, those leverages, those levers that we can flip and create huge results with small changes. And then we'll look at your revenue model. So we'll really discuss what kinds of quick wins you can get. You'd be surprised at how quickly you can streamline things. It's actually kind of fun. It's like doing a wardrobe edit in your closet. And then also just talk about what a long term plan could be for you with the Thrive method and how to create more sustainable high ticket success in your business. So, again, this call is 100% complimentary. It is a no pressure, it's not a sales call. It's packed with actionable value. But that said, of course, I would be interested in exploring a relationship with you if that's something that you want to go further with. So, we will take a look at that and see if it makes sense for you to engage in one of my one on one offerings. And if that is the case, if you book your consultation call within the next 5 days, you will also get a generous $300 off any of my one on one programs. So, um, even if you don't decide to do that, though, you will leave with a clear roadmap from this call for the next steps that you can take. And I will be so excited to share that with you. So spots are obviously limited for this call. If it seems like a good fit, I would highly recommend you grab one of the spots while they're available. And I look forward to seeing you there. I hope that I get a chance to talk with you and help you grow your business and help you book out your client roster with amazing, high quality clients. Thanks so much for being here. I'll see you soon.